All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another tier list with me, Josh. I don't know if last time we hit our goal. I'm recording this only 2 days after the last one got uploaded, but I'm sure we crushed it. I'm sure we did great. Um, Honestly, we probably didn't even get close, but I enjoyed doing the last one, so I thought we'd do this again. I have a few quality of life improvements hanging out here. I'm going to try and talk a bit better so I don't have to cut out as many ums or pauses, but I'm sure there'll still be plenty of those. But anyway, for today's list, I thought we'd do something a bit more niche, which also will lead to it being a much shorter video, which I think might help because the last one was like 32 minutes, and nobody has time for that right now, which I understand. So today what we're doing is we're going to be looking at the BioShock Plasmids and Vigors, obviously from the BioShock games. I'm personally a huge fan of BioShock. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And we're going to be looking at the Plasmids and Vigors, and we're going to see how well I feel they would work if you were to have them in the real world. So basically how practical they would be if you were to have one. Now, it goes without saying that a lot of these very much so would let you just murder a person. So we're going to ignore that fact, because murdering someone, while yes, you could probably take over the world with some of these, is not very practical for your day-to-day life. So we're going to look past that, and we're going to look at them for other uses you could use them for, and then we'll put them into a tier list. So down here I have super, very, somewhat, and not practical. And we'll just throw them in. We won't be doing all of them, because a few of them that are from BioShock Infinite are essentially the same as they are in BioShock, or just slightly different. So we'll get to those at the end. But let's just jump right into it on this next very exciting episode. So first off, we got Sonic Boom, which in itself is a weird plasmid, because it was DLC for the first game that really, all it does is it lets you push out a supersonic wave to like knock things around. So not very practical, I'd say. I can't think of too many situations unless like somebody was throwing something large at you. You had to like push it away. You would use it. So I'm going to throw that one into not for now. Next up, we have Aereo Dash, which is one of the ones that was exclusive to the BioShock 2 multiplayer, which I really enjoyed. I played it a lot. Essentially, this one just lets you dash forward, but I'm pretty sure if you used it in the air, you could actually fly forward, so you could clear gaps, which once again, I'm not sure how many gaps you're coming to in your day-to-day life, but who knows? Maybe you're in a tough spot, you gotta, clear a building or something, you're jumping off a roof to another one. And also maybe you just got to get somewhere real fast, so you just got to zoom off. So we'll throw that one into somewhat for now. This one, I think technically is supposed to be Hypnotize Big Daddy, because we have Enrage down here, but we're not going to, but because in the second game, Enrage and Hypnotize Big Daddy were combined into just Hypnotize, we're just going to treat this one as Hypnotize for right now. And I think, see, here's the thing. I said at the beginning how, obviously you could murder people with this, but taking control of somebody is also pretty malicious, but I'm going to include it as a practical use of this. I don't know how often in your life you need to hypnotize someone. Obviously a lot of these you could also use as cool parlor tricks and become a great magician. So in that sense, a lot of them get a lot more useful. But I'm going to say it's somewhat useful to be able to hypnotize your friends or enemies and use them for whatever purpose you would like to use them for. Next up, we have Bucking Bronco. Now this one is one of the BioShock Infinite ones we'll be looking at. It's all right. It lets you basically throw out a shockwave that launches people into the air and like immobilizes them. But essentially it could be used to peacefully immobilize a group of people. So for that reason, I think I'll put it at the bottom of somewhat, just because I don't really think it would be that practical in your day-to-day life. But who knows? Maybe you could find a use for it. Next up is Winter Blast, one of the big elemental ones. And this one's kind of interesting, because it allows you to turn your arm into just like ice. So that in itself could be useful. It's a hot summer day, you're out, you don't have any water, or you're just overheating, just turn your arms into ice, cool yourself down. Already pretty useful. You can freeze things. So like, let's say, I don't know, you're trying to cross a lake, you can just freeze the lake or a portion of it. You could, if it was really hot out, you could spray some ice into the air and cool other people down. I'm taking some liberties with these. Obviously, these aren't things you can do in the actual games. In the game, it's just, oh, you freeze somebody solid, and then you can shatter them. But I think I'm going to put this one in very, because I feel like there's a lot of applications to being able to freeze things that we might not be thinking about. Electrobolt's an interesting one, because when I first think of it, I think, oh, you could like recharge your phone or like charge things, but I'm not exactly sure if I guess it depends on how good you are with using it. I feel like charging your phone, you'd have something similar to that scene in Shazam where he's like charging everybody's phone, and he just blows the guy's phone up. But then again, I also imagine you could do stuff like, if somebody was having like a heart attack or their heart was something wrong with it, you could like do like the AED thing where like you shock them back, which once again, who knows how much control you have over your voltage, but pretending you have a lot of control over it, you could do that. You could sneak up on your friend and give him a little shock to surprise him, or just murder your friend by accident. Who knows? But I do think there's enough applications with this one that it can sit right there next to Winter Blast. I gotta be honest, Gravity Well is not super useful. Basically, it lets you throw a ball and then it creates a little vortex, and the vortex explodes. Not a whole lot you can do with that. Maybe you guys can think of more creative solutions, but I'm actually going to put that at the bottom of not very practical right now. Geyser Trap and Cyclone Trap, which is down here, are pretty similar, but if I remember correctly, Geyser Trap, which is another multiplayer one, you could put a geyser trap on the ground and then step on it yourself to boost you up to higher areas. And I think for that reason, I'm going to put it in somewhat right above Bucking Bronco, because like, I don't know, maybe you need to get on top of a building for some reason and there's no other way up, so you just boost yourself up there. Could be useful. Yeah, we'll say that. Obviously there's not many other applications to it, unless you want to like not launch your friend like 5 feet into the air and then drop him, which, like, I don't know, to each their own, I guess. Next is the Houdini Splicer, another Bioshock 2 multiplayer one. And this one, I feel, is our first super practical. Because think about it, essentially it lets you turn invisible. Which, like, yes, you could do a lot of malicious things with that. In fact, I can't think of many non-malicious things you could do with the ability to just boop out of there. I still think you could use it to sneak into a movie. You could, in case you're playing hide and seek, you just dip out. Or you're in a situation you don't want to be in, you just disappear. You'd find ways to use it, I'm sure. But I'm going to put it in super. I feel good with that. I'm also going to put Incinerate in super. I think I'm going to put it above turning invisible. Because just having fire as like a source that you can just always have, super useful. If it's winter and it's super cold, just turn your hands on fire. It's great. Like, you'd be warm. You could be really slick. I like how I hesitated on the word slick. I'm going to keep that in. You could be really slick. You could snap your fingers. Because that's the thing they show off in the games is that, hey, light your cigarette with your fingertip. If you want to start a bonfire, if you have to start a barbecue or something, just having that there, you never need to buy matches ever again. Yeah, I think having the ability to just use fire whenever you want is more useful than ice or electricity. You know what I think is even more useful than that? Insect swarm. Because think about it like this. All right, hear me out. We have a bee population issue. The bees are dying. You summon killer bees. Or you don't summon them. You manifest them. As far as I'm concerned, you manifest them. Because in the game, you're under the ocean. Yes, there are some bees because you visit like a beehive area. Or whatever it's called. Those areas where they keep bees. Bee sanctuary. I think there's an actual word for it. Doesn't matter. But essentially, as far as I can tell, and as far as I'm concerned, really, you can correct me if you want, you're just manifesting bees. So if you're just creating bees from your body, you could save the bee population. You throw out a swarm of bees every once in a while. They are killer bees. But I did do another Google search, and killer bees still produce honey. So they still pollinate, which I think means that we could save the world. Not the world, the bee population, called a whole lot of other issues. in the world right now. But I think insect swarm be useful. You can argue with me if you want, but I think that one very practical in today's day and age. Next up is Ironsides, one of those weird ones they included in the Infinite DLC. This one, it's not very useful. Essentially what it does is you put it in front of you, and then if somebody shoots you, it takes that bullet and puts it into your gun, which A, means you have to already be holding a gun, but I guess also it prevents you from getting shot, which is useful, but I don't know how often you're getting into situations where you're going to get shot. Hopefully not too often, but really, like, the odds of this being a useful thing you could use in your day-to-day life, like, not really. I'll put it above Gravity Well. I guess I could put it above Sonic Boom. Yeah, I guess it would be more practical to avoid getting shot than to be able to blast something back that's getting thrown at you. Then again, I guess things are getting thrown at you more often than you getting shot at, I'm guessing, depending on who you are. Feel free to comment down below if you get shot at more often than people throw things at you. Yeah, we'll put it like that for now. Next up is Murder of Crows. It's very similar to Insect Swarm, except instead of bees, it's crows. Now, I don't know how the crow population is doing, and I don't know how dependent our world is on crows, but I feel like it's not as dependent on them as the bees. But I feel like it would still be pretty cool to be able to summon crows out of your hands. So I'll put it at the bottom of somewhat. Because, you know, a lot of these too would be very useful, I feel like, on movie sets or like in theatrical shows. You know, you just have a murder of crows. That's the proper term for a group of crows. You just have a murder of crows fly across the stage or something. Could be useful. In fact, now I'll leave Bucking Bronco ahead of it, but I think it would be useful. Next up is Peeping Tom. The name already suggests what it does. It basically lets you spy on people through walls, which once again, pretty malicious, pretty not good to do. But could it be useful? You know, you hear some people are talking about, I guess you can't hear any better, you just see. But you're like, you see two people go somewhere, you're like, where are they going? Throw this up, see what's going on. Like, see, I feel bad, because you know some people would use this very maliciously. But I'll put it at the top of somewhat, because there are some practical uses for it, I'm sure. You know, you go to the store, here's one, you go to the store, you try on some shoes, like, oh, these shoes don't fit. You ask the person, hey, can you check the back for a different size? They're like, okay, sure. They go to the back, you throw out Peeping Tom, and then you see if they actually check, or if they just stand there for a minute and then come back out until you know. Which, you know, don't be a dick when you're a customer, but just, you know, something to keep in mind. Alright, next up is Scout. Who remembers Scout? Remember that new plasmid they included in Bioshock 2? It's not the only new plasmid, but it's the one you would get earliest on. And honestly, I barely ever used it in the game. But I think Scout, honestly, would be very useful. Because essentially what it is you summon a ghost that you control, and it goes out and it looks around areas for you. So you could, once again, you could sneak in areas without actually having to physically go there. So let's say like you're walking down the street eating an ice cream, and some jackass comes and just knocks it out of your hand. You'd be like, the fuck? You summon Scout, because Scout is still able to interact with things, and you just go up behind him, and you punch him in the head, and you just carry on with your day. Technically in game you couldn't physically use weapons, but you could use plasmids, so I'm going to argue that Scout would let you hit someone in the back of the head if you really wanted to. So that is useful. If you wanted to, like, I don't know, you could kind of sneak into places, but you could really just look at them and then have to come right back, because you can only go so far from yourself. But I think overall Scout would be the most useful, or the second most useful. I think Houdini would still be the most useful of these sort of spy ones between like Houdini, Scout, and Peeping Tom. I think it would be up there. I think there's a lot of practicality to being able to go check an area out without actually physically leaving where you are. Return to Sender. Return to Sender is kind of weird because it's very similar to Ironsides, except instead of catching the bullet and putting it in your gun, this one will collect the bullets if you're holding it, and then you can throw them back and place a trap on the ground. I'm trying to remember if it's just bullets it collects or if it's actual like physical contact. Because I feel like in game, when you got hit, if you were holding it out, you would negate the damage and then you would still get the trap. So if it works in the sense of, oh, somebody has punched me, now I have this like kinetic energy ball that I can just throw back at them and then they take the brunt of that. I feel that is more practical. And I think that's how it works, and that's how I'm going to say it works for the sake of this list. And for that reason, I'm going to put it... Once again, depends on how often you get into violent situations. So I won't put it super high. I think it'd be more practical, though, than having to get on top of a building. But not more practical than trying to zoom over a gap. Yeah, we'll go with that. Security bullseye, or security command if you're playing the second one. This one's kind of weird, because the way it works is that you throw the security ball, you throw this little like blue ball onto a guy, and then the security cameras and turrets focus on that target. But in the real world, like security, I don't think we have a whole lot of security cameras that turn. At least I haven't seen too many. So in that sense, it wouldn't be super useful. But I feel like if we stretch the truth a little bit and just say, oh, like you hit somebody with it, or you hit a security camera with it, because I think you could do that in the game too. If you hit the security camera with the ball, it would ignore you. Which, once again, I don't know how that would actually work. If you actually could create a way for a security camera to specifically not pay attention to you. But I feel like there's some workarounds. It's a bit of a stretch though. So I think I'll put it at the top of not really practical, just given the facts around it. But I think you could probably come up with an argument to put it higher on the list. Target decoy. Target decoy. This one's fun because essentially it allows you to just throw down an exact duplicate of yourself while you go do something else. Like for instance, let's say you're just, you're stuck talking to somebody you don't like, and they're just going off, and you're just like, oh hey, what's that over there? They turn, you just down your target decoy, and you just fuck off, and they just keep talking to this version of you that just stands there doing nothing the whole time. I think that would be pretty practical. Or you, for instance, if you're not, a mean person, let's say you're waiting in line, and you're like, oh man, I want a snack from that vending machine, but I don't want to lose my spot in line, and there's no one here to help me keep it. You could just be like, throw down a target decoy, go get your snack, and come back. Obviously, it doesn't stay forever. There's a time limit to it, but I feel for like short things, there's actually a decent amount of practicality here for it, especially in your day-to-day life. So I think I'm going to put it... is it more practical or less practical than Scout? Honestly, I feel like with just how those two examples I gave happen way more often than you needing electricity, I'm going to put it there. Now, telekinesis. This is the big one. This one's going at the very top of the list. Because you know how useful it would be to just be like, I want that book on my shelf. Zoom, I have that book. Or I want that thing. Or like somebody's thrown up, even in sports, think about it. Like somebody hits a baseball and you look up and you just yoink it out of the sky. Incredibly practical in every way. I think it's the one that's going to be staying at the top. Spoilers for, we're only going to cover the next 3 on this list. But yeah, it's the best. Like, why would you not want the ability to just see something and pull it to you instantly? I think you could use that in plenty of situations. Next up is Cyclone Trap. And unlike Geyser Trap, you can't step on it yourself once you put it down. So really you could just use it to fuck with people. But at the velocity it launches people into the sky, I think you would only really just kill them. So for that reason, I'm going to put it down here with Gravity Well. Next up is Undertow, which essentially is similar to Sonic Boom a bit, but it feels less forceful because you sort of shoot a wave of water out of your hand. It kind of just knocks guys aside. It was really fun in Infinite because you'd like walk up to a guy who's standing on the edge and just boop him off and then he'd go flying. But like the idea of just pushing people with it or pushing things is fun. Also, in a way, I guess it lets you manifest water because you are using like water to push them around. You could also use it in game, like get somebody wet and then electrocute them for extra damage. So I guess in a way that's useful. I'm not sure if it's drinking water, but I assume if it's coming out of a physical body, it would be like similar to like your tears or sweat. So you can't really drink it. So I think I think it has some purpose. I'll put it above I'll put it above Bunking Bronco 2, but I think that's about as far as it's going to get. And the last one we're going to look at today, because these other 6 here are basically just versions of other ones, like Shock Jockey's just Electro Bolt, Devil's Kiss, Incinerate, Old Man Winter, Winter Blast. Possession is basically just Hypnotize, but if you upgrade it all the way, then the person you hypnotize kills themselves after they're done, which is worse. Enrage we already talked about. And Charge is basically Aereo Dash, which is a weird sort of comparison, because this one's a Bioshock 2 multiplayer Plasmid, and this one's a Vigor from Bioshock Infinite. But I think this one you couldn't use in the air, whereas Aereo Dash you could. If I'm wrong, then, essentially all of these I think would basically just go beside their counterparts. But the last one we're going to look at, and I wasn't going to look at it, but then I thought about it some more. This is a spoiler for Bioshock 2, but it's been out for 10 years, so hopefully you've played it, and if not, this isn't a huge thing. But you get this plasmid after freeing your original little sister, and basically allows you to summon her so she'll fight beside you. And at first I was like, well, what's the practicality of a plasmid called Summon Eleanor? You just throw it, and then some random girl named Eleanor just shows up in your house. I don't think there's much practicality of that at all, other than just pissing people off named Eleanor. But then I started to try and think about it some more. And I was like, well, what if the way it works, because in the game it kind of works, you throw it and then it kind of calls her, but if she's not available, she doesn't show up. So essentially I was thinking, well, what if it's just almost like a pager? Like, oh, you and your friend have some kind of a link somehow. I don't know. Don't question it. And then when you throw the plasma down, it sends like a little internal sort of ding to your friend. Is like, oh, he needs me here, I'll be right there. Which, if that's the case, it's still not really that practical, honestly. You could just call your friend. But I think, honestly, I think I'm going to put it at the bottom of somewhat, but it just doesn't get into knock. 'Cause I think throwing a Murder of Crows is much more interesting and in turn practical. Like I said, if you were on a movie set of some kind and needed crows, if you were remaking The Birds or something, Murder of Crows, incredibly practical for that. But Summon Eleanor, I think is a little less, but it's not practical. It could serve a purpose. And with that, that's our little tier list. So let me know what you guys think of my list down below. What would you change? What would you do different? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another tier list. I'm not sure. I don't think we're going to go back to Pokemon yet, but we might. We'll see what I come up with between now and then. But let me know if you enjoy this more niche sort of video, and I will see you guys next time.